The last technique I will show you is the filling technique that I use the most. And for that purpose, I chose the thinnest fabric, which is also translucent. And it's the most delicate to work with. Until now, I didn't show you how to work with thinner threads. Now I will do that. So for this purpose, I will draw just an apple. As you can see, when you draw, it's not super easy because the fabric is moving. So then I will install the hoop like previously. For this kind of fabrics, I will just recommend fillers, because then if you don't do fillers, if you just do lines and if you cross on the back from one line to another, you can see the stitches. So that's why, for example, if I do apples and if I do another one, I will always cut the threads in between. I will not cross because you can see it. For this purpose, I will use a shade of orange and a shade of brick color. So first, I will take part of the orange. And because this is a very thin fabric, I only will use 2 strands from the thread. I will do first the outline from one side. So for the outline, I'm using the stem stitch technique. And the inside I will fill with a filler technique, which is called long and short stitches. So actually this is also known as coloring with thread. So this is more of a freestyle technique, so there are no rules. You just make stitches next to each other and they shouldn't be the same length. Also, because it's a thinner fabric, you should always be careful and you should not pull the threads too much. So, and the only thing you should take care is that the lines that are next to each other shouldn't be with the same length. You can see here when we have lines with the same length, when you are sticking the needle in a point, that then a line is creating, which here we don't need it because we want to create a more synchronized surface. So then you just find a place wherever there is no embroidery. And for this kind of thin fabrics, I wouldn't recommend more than 2 strands from the thread. So now we will close this thread and we will mix again colors. So I want to show you a gradient of colors in this technique. So for continuing, I will just take 1 thread from the color we already used and I will cut the same length from the darker color. So I will pull 1 strand from the darker color and I will put the 2 strands together. So I'm making a knot. And now I will continue with embroidering. Now for the rest of the apple, I will just use the darker color. Now I will close this thread. So again, I will pull out 2 strands. As you can see, my thread went through the fabric. So even though I tied 2 knots, so I think I need to tie 1 or 2 more. So this is not a very dense fabric. That's why it's always good to tie multiple knots so it doesn't go out. So it's easier for me when I mark the outlines first. So I'm using the stem stitch and sometimes I'm using the split stitch. It depends on the curve. Okay, so now because I don't really like the shape, I will just add few more outlines. Okay, now so you can see the gradient from lighter to darker color. As you can see, you see really everything. So I need to cut out the threads. So now I have leftovers from the green, so I will again use 2 strands to finish the handle. And for the handle, I will just use the split stitch technique. So I will close the green now. We'll cut out the threads short enough. Those are all of the filling techniques that I use. We will see more of them in the final project, which we will start creating in the next unit.